Good morning, Grace Community Chapel family. Happy to be with you here, and we're going to be looking at the Psalms today. Not all of them, I promise. We don't have all month. But we're going to take a look at 19 Psalms over the course of the next month or so. We're going to basically start today with Psalm 1. And some of these are going to be shorter, some of them are going to be a little bit longer, but we're going to take a psalm each day. And I want you to meditate on the psalm each day. If you, by chance, watch this video, sometimes these sections, especially in the beginning, they're very short. But I want you to think about what the psalm reveals and what does the psalm say about God? What does it say about me? And how do I meditate on that song for that day? So, what we're going to be looking at is the book of Psalms. And so, as you may be aware, the book of Psalms is extremely relevant to us today because the Psalms are ultimately the hymn book of the New Testament church. When you begin reading through the New Testament, it's apparent that they quote, whether it's a direct quote or a reference, they use the Psalms a lot. And it's apparent from church history that the Psalms are used throughout the first couple of centuries of the church because that was the songs that Judaism used in their services as well as their prayers. So it's the hymn book of the New Testament church before we had hymn books. And so the Psalms address within them a wide variety of topics and primarily displays the character of God. The reflection of what he does in the community of believers, specifically within Israel, but can be referenced to the church. The nature of man through self-awareness of the author of the psalm, thinking about himself or herself in relation to the God of the Old Testament, Yahweh, the Lord, and how the Lord has covenantally promised and what he has done. And basically a realistic response to grief, the nature of the world around us, to suffering, to war, all of those things. And we also see some real serious takes on those topics in a poetic manner. So a serious study of the Psalms could really benefit everyone. So, but we're going to be looking at just the first 19 chapters over the next course of the month. We may come back to it and do it again in the future. Just for some point of reference for you, you'll notice right at the top of the screen here on my left, I believe it is, that Psalms 1 is just right before, yeah, it's actually my right. I can realize that now. So Psalms 1, it says Book 1. You'll see that at the very top. The Psalms are basically broken up into 5 books, and people don't recognize that because in most of our new Bibles, there are just one book of the Psalms, and then we have Proverbs, Song of Songs, and Ecclesiastes, and then Lamentations are kind of all the wisdom literature. And so, but the Psalms are actually 5 books. And what's interesting is it's broken up into 5 books intentionally. Many argue that it was wrote and broken up this way as a commentary in each of the books of the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of the Old Testament: Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy. And so some argue that the first book deals with Genesis and is a commentary specifically along the book of Genesis. Now, there's other scholars that say it's not necessarily accurate, but here's the reality is that there is an organizer of the Psalms. We don't know who the organizer was. We don't know who kind of compiled all the Psalms into their individual books. But he obviously had, or she had, an intention specifically in the organization of the Psalms. And the Psalms themselves have different authors. It spans different periods of Israel's history, from the very beginning up until the very end, post-exilic time. You'll notice as we go down through them, some of the Psalms are specifically labeled that they're written by an individual. It'll say it in the actual text. Now, that's not a addition that we have in the 21st century or the 20th century where they added that in so that you would know it's in the text. And so you'll notice that many of the Psalms are written by David. You'll notice many of them written by Asaph, and then we have as many other authors as well. Regardless of the intent of the author, of whoever, or not the author, but the compiler, whoever was compiling, his point is to provide a location and a collection of songs and prayers for the church, and specifically, in reference to the Old Testament, the Israel to be able to utilize in their services. And so with that in mind, let's go ahead and take a look at the first chapter of the book of Psalms. Very, very brief, but very, very important. It's titled in my Bible, The Way of the Righteous and the Wicked. Blessed is the man who walks not in the counsel of the wicked, nor stands in the way of sinners, nor sits in the seat of scoffers. But his delight is the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water that yields fruit in season, and its leaf does not wither. In all that he does, he prospers. The wicked are not so. They are like chaff that the wind drives away. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the congregation of the righteous. For the Lord knows the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked will perish. So very brief, but there's a lot here. And something that's going to be important for you to recognize is when the scriptures use the word blessed. Blessed. We think, oh, bless his heart kind of thing from down south, right? It's kind of how we think of it. But that's not how the Bible uses it. It's more of along the lines of, oh, the joys of those who. A lot of words in order to be able to communicate that idea. But basically, the joy of the person who is in whatever the description of blessed is. And so in the context of Psalms chapter 1, looking at verse 1, it says, Blessed is the man, and of course that's generic, it could be a woman as well, who walks not in the counsel of the wicked. Now, I think it's interesting, walking, it gives the context of that you are following the way of. So this is in the context of the counsel of the wicked. It means that you're listening to wicked counselors. Now, I'll tell you, this is very easy to do because a lot of times the world will give you wisdom. And we go out and we look for the wisdom of the world. And sometimes that's good wisdom, but not always. And so we have to be really cautious when we're taking counsel of the wicked. We really need to be looking for better counsel because we should be following the counsel of the godly, the people who are in Christ, people who are following the Lord. And so in the context here, this individual is walking in counsel of the wicked. Now, what I think is so interesting is that the way that the psalmist does this is he starts by the person is walking in the counsel of the wicked. And then they reference standing in the way of sinners. So this individual should not, the blessed is the person who does not, do these things. First, listen to the wrong kind of advice, the advice from wicked people. And second, who stands in the way of sinners. That means proceeds to act in the wrong way. That you are amidst, that you are acting, you are standing, you are responding in the way that sinners do. That those who are apart from God, those all are sinners, obviously, but in the context of the passage here, we're talking about people who are outside of the covenant community of Christ, outside of the covenant community of Israel in context. So, looking at it specifically, many are arguing specifically here that this is the coming alongside, being a part of, and you're standing amidst them because you're now starting to rub shoulders with them. Not only are you listening to the counsel, but now you're rubbing shoulders with them. And then the last thing is that they sit in the seat of scoffers. Now, a scoffer is someone who is kind of makes joke or makes light of, and in this context, it would be the law of the Lord. They would make light of the law of the Lord. And at this point, they went from walking, standing, and now they're sitting. And this is the context here that the person now has become the wrong kind of person. They are now sitting amongst them. They are one of them. And it's interesting because it's almost like a path, right? Where you walk in the counsel, then you stand in the way, and then you sit in the seat. And there's almost this progressively getting more and more towards this inevitable sitting in the seat of scoffers. And so blessed is the man who doesn't start walking in the counsel of the wicked, who doesn't stand in the way of sinners, and certainly doesn't sit in the seat of scoffers, but instead his delight is in the law of the Lord. his delight. That means that he enjoys the law of the Lord. He desires the law of the Lord. And on the law of the Lord, and this would be in reference to the Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, Deuteronomy, right? Those specific things, and some of Numbers. He's thinking about the law, and he's meditating on it day and night. Now, this does not mean that he is a 24-hour a day, stays up all night and all day to meditate. But the idea is that it's constant, that the law of the Lord is never far from their mind. That they're constantly delighting in it and meditating on it and thinking about it, so as to not walk in the counsel of the wicked, so as to not stand in the way of sinners, and so as to not sit in the seat of the scoffers. The psalmist then kind of goes on and says, he is like a tree planted by streams of water. Now, he gives kind of this image. And if you think about Israel, right, there are areas of desert, and then there are areas of lush growth. And so where the lush growth exists in Israel is where there are streams, where there are rivers. That's where the lush growth is. And so he says he's like a tree, not planted in the desert, but he's a tree planted by streams of water. The streams of water being the law that's being meditated on all the time. It says then that it yields its fruit in season, and its leaf does not wither. Now, what's interesting here is that if you're meditating on the law of the Lord day and night, and you delight in that law, and that's kind of like being a tree planted by streams of water, you're going to yield your fruit in season when it's time, and your leaf will never wither. You'll never see decay. Now, this doesn't reference health. This isn't health and wealth, but this is the idea of that spiritually and mentally, and that you will not fall away. And the next thing it says, in all he does, he prospers. And this does have an element of physical prospering, of physical prospering in the sense of monetary, in terms of, whatever else ways of prospering we can, both in this world and, of course, the next. And then verse 4 says, the wicked are not so, but they're like chaff in the wind that drives away. Now, if you are familiar with the process of wheat and chaff, chaff is the stuff that kind of grows up alongside of wheat. And when you break it up, it kind of, it's really light. It's not heavy like the grain. The grain will drop down, and the chaff, when the wind blows, the chaff just kind of blows away. And so the idea here is that the wicked, they don't have any substance to them. But like chaff, when the wind blows, they just go away. And so the idea here continues in verse 5. Therefore, the wicked will not stand in judgment. They won't be able to withstand judgment. They're not going to stand in judgment. Nor sinners will be able to stand in the congregation of the righteous. Because the Lord knows the way of the righteous, and the way of the wicked will perish. This is interesting. The Lord knows the way of the righteous. This is the idea that the Lord upholds and stands firm, and knows that the proper end of the righteous person and the way of the wicked will ultimately lead to perishing. So, that is Psalms chapter 1. Thanks for being here with me today. If you have any thoughts or comments or something that you noticed in the text, feel free to leave it in the comments, and we'll do Psalm chapter 2 tomorrow. Looking forward to it. God bless you all. Have a great rest of your Thursday, and be looking out for, I know there's a storm coming, so be looking out for it, and be safe out there. God bless you all.